Alrighty, so looking a little ragged, getting ready for bed actually. So tonight's going to be a short one. I got to get up really early tomorrow for some stuff. Whew. So where were we? We've done Okay, I guess really the thing we need to discuss today are the sketch videos and remixing old songs plus the audio games. And then tomorrow, that sort of leaves the discussion of the homage videos and the homage art video. So it's just the homage and homage tomorrow, I guess. The 3 sketch videos that I came up with and reworked, they're based off of events that happened to me. And the more I think about it, the more fun I think it'll be to do this type of video in the future. I have a lot of experience in different types of jobs, and just the way things happen. I goof around a lot with people. I have fun conversations with customers on a regular basis, and I have weird interactions on a pretty regular basis too. So like the first sketch video I thought would be fun to do is more along the lines of just a quirky comment like, there are certain foods that we eat in the world that they're poisonous if you eat them in the regular way you would think to eat them, but they're not poisonous if you do certain things first. And I've always sort of joked with other people like, how did you figure that out? Like, was there legitimately a point in, people sitting around a table? So the first skit I wanted to do was the people sitting around a table discovering how poisonous rhubarb is. Like, it's one of those foods that when you take a bite out of it, it could kill you. If you take a bite out of the wrong end at the wrong time of season. But if you take a bite out of the right, like, how do you figure that out? It's just like, okay, guys, well, pass it around this thing, and the first one to die, we don't eat past that point. Like, what? Like, really? Is this how we did things? It seems like a very slipshod way of doing things. And I just think illustrating that through a silly little skit would be funny. But that's definitely one of the lamer ones of the ones that I could do. One of the other ones is based off of going to see a Star Wars movie with a friend of mine. And we went to it was just one of those WTF days is what I think would probably be the best way to phrase it. Is we went to get something to eat beforehand. So we went through a drive-through, and I asked if they had something that wasn't acidic to drink. To which, no fault to the person in the window, working the window that day. I'm sure it was confusing. They didn't know how to respond. They didn't understand the situation. But when I ask you if you have some non-acidic drinks that I could drink instead of sodas or orange juice, if your response is we have veggie burgers, what? Anyway, so we finished that part up. We headed over to a place to do some eating, and we parked in the outdoor eating areas and sat down to eat something. And we overheard a conversation of somebody talking about how they found a nail in their tire, and they were deeply upset that when they pulled the nail out, their tire hissed at them. What? And so just doing a skit of that afternoon of getting something to eat, hearing that conversation at outdoor eating, and then going to see a movie that just, it was just such a weird series of events that day. And so doing a skit about that, and then the third event was going to be sort of a fun look at some of the things I deal with periodically in some of my employment. There was definitely one day where it's a sort of a visual gag, and I have to pull it off right to make it work. But just an accidental positioning of myself outside the front of the store with a rolled up carpet on a certain day of the year had a few people walking in laughing hysterically before I could figure out what it was that I had done wrong. And so sort of doing that, just set that up, put it out there, have a little fun doing those skits. I want to do more skits like that because I mean I have a lot of fun working the retail jobs that I do, sometimes just goofing around with the customers. There have been a few times where I've done some work, like recently I did some joking around with customers, and I've put some real zingers out there, and I've had customers jokingly say like, "Oh, so you're not actually here to ring us out. You're here to practice stand-up." And I was like, not really, no, but I can see where you would get that impression because I am always joking with customers. Lighthearted fun. People have a blast with me when I do stuff at the register. Like my formal way of being greeted at the register is to ask people like, "And how goes the adventure?" And they respond usually with a follow-up of like, "And how are you?" And I can say, "Well, I'm likely to survive the afternoon." And it gets a chuckle. People chuckle at that. That's how I start most of my interactions. And it only gets more playful as we go. So I do feel like, to a certain degree, when working at a store like this, I have a tendency to make this an experience for the customers, not just a transaction. And so I've done this off and on for periods of years, and I have had plenty of fun and quirky interactions with customers. So I have plenty of stories to share, some of them of customers totally getting into having fun. There's a radioactive chipmunk joke somewhere in there that we will get to at some point. But yeah, it's just like all sorts of fun has been had doing this. And I think they would make fun sketches. So there's a part of me that wants to maybe set up a green screen setup to look like do an interior of a store behind me, and then do a setup to look like a cash register, and just do the skits on the cash register as if I were working the cash register. So that's sort of like some of what I'd like to do with the sketches. The first three sketches are definitely what I would call the how do we know we can eat that? WTF, and I don't know what to call the last one without spoiling it. The one where I was working retail. Things about, I don't know. There's got to be a way I can name it in a way that makes it not spoiled. But I got to figure that one out. But they are the first three that I came up with earlier in the year, scripted out, and sort of did some sketch outlines of how the scenes would lay out. So I think what I want to try to do for that is get a sense for what kind of effects and techniques I can use for filming, angles, whatnot. How many takes, like, do I use a camera 1 and camera 2? And get a little familiarity with using the cameras to achieve certain shots that way. Because then I can apply what I learned doing this simple skits towards doing more cinematic and interesting works. And so being able to learn how to do these things more cinematically is the first step towards doing more things like the rewrites of the Star Wars prequels that I want to work on. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, I'm trying to keep it about 15, 20 minutes today. So I'm trying to jump over here now to the audio games specifically. I was doing some remixing of old music, like music from the early 1900s to late 1800s that we just don't know anymore. Pull out a few bars of some of those songs and take the individual notes that would have been played on a piano and make individual chords and make complementary chords in a beat track that's a more modern beat track over just the musical tones, and see what kind of sound we can get towards potentially making some music. And it may not always be like bar 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Dance With Me from 1892. It might be something a little bit more like bars 2, 6, and 5 in that order, looped, and seeing what we can get from remixing those particular bars. And so I want to dabble with that a little bit as just sort of a way to get familiar with like Lego blocks of making music, because I want to see what I can just do playing around with some of that before I try to fabricate everything from scratch. I want to see what feels right, what makes sense, and what sounds right if I do certain things with it. The audio games, however, I blame fully on a certain viewer of my channel for prompting doing some computer-based tabletop game idea stuff. And so it reminded me of the old Tiger Electronics XLR robot interactive toy that a housemate of mine had and pulled out of storage for his son. And the toy is, the way the toy works is each audio cassette that you put in and push play has 4 channels on each ribbon that's in it. 2 for the front and 2 for the back. Well, this particular tape recorder had a setup that allowed it to read any one of those 4 depending on which button you're pushing. So the left audio channel, the right audio channel, the left back channel, and the right back channel had 4 channels that you could pop between, and it would allow you to use it interactively as a toy. So it would be asking you on the tape somewhere a certain question. And the gimmick of this one required that it never flipped the tape over. So everything on the back side of the tape was recorded backwards. And so you have those things always playing. So you're not, in order to get the back of the tape to play, you're not flipping the tape over to get the response and then essentially rewinding side A. No, you're playing all 4 channels in the same direction, and you're clipping where you need it to be for the response that you use to answer the question that was given to you. And I got to thinking, like, that would be fun to try to play with now. It gives the illusion of an interactivity. It's basically, it has all 4 responses, and you're just cutting out all 3 of the ones that don't fit what you're doing. So with that in mind, I was thinking like it'd be fun to do that kind of interactivity toy now, but we don't use cassette tapes, and I don't think there's a way to really do that on a CD really well. But then I got to thinking, like, it is something like we still use stereo audio. So a left and right channel we could play with. And so I started playing around with doing the taking headphones and just listening to one channel or the other, depending on how you answer. And you can do that for some very simple true or false or binary choice questions. You know, ask a simple question of like, has Superman ever fought against the Hulk? And you'd think like, no, of course not. They're different universes, but there was a crossover where they did fight. So you might answer no, but the answer would be yes. And then I can explain why. There was a Marvel DC crossover, and the two fought in that. And give some more details about how, like, in that crossover, Batman also fought against Captain America. And do questions like that where it's a binary choice. Now, as I played with it a little bit more, there were ways to make simplified a choose your own adventure style videos, which is where Space Cadet storyline came from. And the possibility of doing again, simplified choose your own adventure with every wrong choice leading to a dead end and having to start over again. Like the corn maze idea that you had, that's something you can do with that technique where every wrong turn gets you trapped in a corner with a monster that kills you. So you just start at the beginning again and give it another round and try to be able to get away. And so there is a sense that we could easily do something like that. But more complex choose your own adventure sort of requires more channels. And so you need more than left and right audio. If you want more than left and right audio, I've been looking at the possibility of doing a 4-channel audio setup that uses I forget the actual word for it, but it's high-low filtering. So there's each stream of audio would be something that the frequency of my voice covers 2 parts of the vocal spectrum. But if I do some editing beforehand where I sync my voice to a certain pitch range and then sync my voice to another pitch range and get them right up to the edge where they don't quite overlap, and playing both channels together still sounds like my voice, but when you hit a button, it'll filter the low end. You hit a different button, it'll filter the high end, and therefore you can have high end, low end audio on the same track. And if it's stereo, you'll have high end, low end left, high end, low end right. You now have 4 channels that you can work on. And that prospect was something that I was looking forward to potentially playing with a little bit more. It would require maybe building a controller type device with 4 buttons on it that you can choose which of the 4 choices you're going to use for proceeding forward. Now, just 4 plain channels is likely to result in a needing of pretty frequent killing off the channel still. So you're going to have 2 choices. Say you start the story, you have 2 choices in which direction to go. Each one of those can have 2 choices on which way to go. One of them has to be a dead end that forces you to go back to the beginning and start over again. So that of the 3 choices that you have left, one of them can switch to the now empty channel, and you have to kill off one of the other 2. and have that move in a way. And so it's like keeping track of how you have to kill off options to keep people on a frame of reference where they're only ever going to be 4 results for any given path, and one of them is always at least a dead end, possibly 2 of which are always a dead end. It gives you the space to branch the other 2 out again. And so playing with the choose your own adventure story structure ideas, that's sort of where I want to try to go with that. And I'm running a little late. I've got to get to bed because I got to get up early tomorrow. So I appreciate you sticking with me, and sorry for the short, abrupt one. I may cover a little bit more of this kind of stuff tomorrow as I discuss some of the homage videos, and I might spread some of this over. I hate to cut it this short, but I got to get up by 7 a.m. tomorrow. All right. And it's 7 a.m. my time, so it's almost midnight here this time. I'm already running on a deficit of sleep. This is probably not going to go well. It might take me an hour to fall asleep, so I'll probably get 5 hours tomorrow. All right. See you tomorrow. Oh, come on. I hit the button. There we go.